You are listening to WXRW Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play Riverwest Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee and Troubadour Bakery, makers of artisan breads and scratch-baked goodies. Visitors to Collectivo's Bayview Cafe can look in on Troubadour Bakers as they prepare breads and cafe favorites daily. More info is at collectivocoffee.com. Welcome to Cinema Fireside. Thank you, listeners, for listening. If you're listening live, it is a kind of a neutral day in Milwaukee. It's overcast, but it's not too cold. There was coolish air that came in for a while, and we're back to warm. I want to thank a colleague here for this nice coffee. Thank you. It's a cozy companion to this evening's proceedings. And we have Gabe Van Handel out there in the... there our man is. Thank you, Gabe, for calling in. We also have a guest. We have a number of people joining. Hey, filmmaker John Bezic just walks by. He will be... Thank you. He will be a guest in the future. I ran into the dude, and he just did he's working on completing, he's in post for a feature film, John Bezic, and he just walked past the studio windows, and in the near future, we will have him as a guest for that endeavor. And the stage area is becoming full with friends, neighbors, and countrymen, which I appreciate, definitely. And we do have a guest tonight, which will be great because he's very informed. He's very cozy. He's a great conversationalist, and I think this is going to work well. And I want to also thank Tom Pankowski for a cookie, which will be eaten off stage. Sugar cookie, those are the best. They really are. Thank you. From the $5 bag sale at the library, man, I got Gore Vidal's The Best Man play that he did. A nice hardcover version right there. Also had the good fortune of, it's not so much the film, but it's the experience. Went to see Isle of Dogs at the Fox Bay Cinema up in Whitefish Bay. And it wasn't a film that I was going to see, but we had an opportunity to see it at 6 p.m. And again, it was just more or less sitting there. That was the experience. And then afterward, we sat in the lobby watching the people come in for the other showings that evening of various films. And it was kind of culturally neat just to just sit there and relax and just watch the people come in. And not all of this do stuff, but just live and be. That's it. Just be. That's it. Just be. Just exist. That's what I'm down for. So, let's see. This weekend was it was intense. It definitely had its textures, and one of the outcomes of that was going down to the south side. And I had to get out to into the Milwaukee County Library System. You can return library materials to any library in the system, and they return them to the respective libraries at due course. So you can go into these mysterious environments, peruse these mysterious shelves, and you can return them back eventually to your home base, which is a great thing. You don't have to return it to the specific library. So while after the film was returned, I quick went into the theater section, and lo and behold, there's Annie Baker's The Flick. It's a play about three people who work in a movie theater, and it was engrossing. That evening, due to circumstances, there was a couple, I think, sessions on the couch reading, and I actually read about 100 pages. Just off the bat, just really into it, and I look forward to certainly to finishing it. So it's really cool to pop into these mysterious libraries for various circumstances, and come away with something and then bring that back into your normal life from this mysterious environment. So that's pretty cool, definitely. Let's see if sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I will talk a little bit, but with all of these people around, it's like, well, you're I don't know. Sometimes you just don't want to keep talking, especially when I've got such a fine guest here who has a very nice voice and a great degree of intelligence as well. So that'll be cool, and he'll co-conspire with Gabe very shortly. So actually, last night we fell asleep to radio dramas, but you get so sleepy that it's just you can't put two and two together. There's some voices, there's some dramatic proceedings, and next thing you know, you're out like a light. So that's that. And I do want to say that I had won the contest on Hollywood 360. It's a nationally syndicated show, and I won it about 5 times. And one of the prizes was a Twilight Zone radio drama CD set, which I didn't really. They're very stagey. They're very kind of like dreamlike because they're kind of like very immediate in their presence. It's not like you feel like they're actually in the environment, but they're almost kind of stage bound in a sense. But that kind of adds to the dreamlike texture. It's like, yeah, there's something different about this, and it does put you to sleep while those monotone drones of the voices and that. I always like that. So, Gabe, I'm going to put you on early. Just hold on a second. Let me see if this is working. My man, are you on? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can hear you.
Okay, you got you've brought a sultry voice to the proceedings?
I hope so, anyway.
Okay, cool. We have LaMont Prospect. He's a writer, and he's got what it takes because he is dedicated to the craft. He doesn't like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do this? Someday he picked up the gauntlet and succeeded because he does what he sets out to do, and that's a real admirable quality. And he's really invested in the craft, studies the craft, talks the craft, lives the craft. Would that be a accurate assessment, LaMont?
Thank you, Mark. I can definitely live with that. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And Gabe, I'll tell you what, you really have an extemporaneous velocity that cannot be stopped. And I am just not a conversationalist because I just kind of like live in my own thoughts. So are you ready, Gabe? Are you ready to say hey to LaMont and talk film? Are you ready, my man?
Oh, very much.
Okay. Hey, Gabe Van Handel, this is LaMont Prospect.
Very nice to meet you. Super cool stuff. So yeah, Mark.
And
Mark,
LaMont,
Mark
he's sitting here with bated breath.
Mark speaks. Chooses his words carefully, and I called Mark up earlier today and was like ready to have this enthusiastic conversation. And I called him, and Mark was in the middle of a few things, and I think was just sort of taking it easy for a second, and at least in the way he was speaking, and I had this like.
Well, no, we were taking the audio off of footage, and then there was other work going on to the side.
Sure.
So I was listening to you, and I was very low key in my responses because I was taking the audio off. Then I was trimming any totally unusable excess because we're getting ready to export it.
Sure. So I was calling Mark and was kind of expecting this, I don't know what I was expecting. And I can tell he's doing 4 things. He's got his mind in 4 places. So that was, and I realized wow, I've just kind of had an episode of the radio show with Mark in our free time. So I'm just going to cut this conversation off and just going to save it for the show.
Highly advisable.
Yeah, but that's cool. Mark always avoids riffraff, so that's cool that he gives you his big thumbs up.
We're all special. It's just that I choose not to talk on the phone. I go bonkers, man. So
yeah. So LaMont, you're a writer, you're a thinker, you're a human being. We talk cinema on the show. Screenplays, writing. What's your process? What are your thoughts?
Actually, I wrote my first book a few years back, and it's a book titled Control. It is a book, Gabe, about people who have an excessive need to control other people and things. It's also about people who allow themselves to be controlled, and how when the need for control gets excessive, it really hurts relationships, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, kids. You see it in the workplace a lot. These kind of micromanaging managers, supervisors, administrators, what have you, who try to sort of overcompensate. And what I'm most pleased to say about the book, Gabe, is very down to earth. No Dr. Phil stuff in there. And they're just real
Is this
stories.
a work of nonfiction? Is this a work of nonfiction?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Oh, excellent stuff. This is super cool, unexpected, and super cool. This is,
Thank you.
just please continue. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you. It's very down to earth, and I think one of the questions I often get is, why would you write a book on control? And my answer is, one morning I woke up and I said to myself, I have a pretty decent education and a pretty decent job, and yet I didn't feel unhappy about things in my life. And when I say things, I mean both people and things, or I guess when I talk about people, I mean basically friends, loved ones, acquaintances, people who you would think would have your best interest in mind, but who often have preconceived notions on who you are, what you should do, what you should be, think, say. In some cases, if it's a parent or maybe a family member, they might think they're helping you in a way, but with the wrong people like that in your life, you can really be stifled from kind of self-actualizing. And
what could you do? Do you stand up for yourself, LaMont? Because I do, man. I mean, it's a give and take. But do you stand up to your antagonists?
Well, I try the best that I can to deal with each situation or person as it arises. That's an interesting question, because the one thing about the book is that it doesn't preach. It doesn't say follow these 7 steps or give any magical answers, because life is different for everybody. We all have different experiences and meet different people and go through different things. So I just kind of laid the stories out there so people could take from it what they found meaningful or interesting, and then let the other parts go.
LaMont,
yes.
one thing I like about what you're saying already, and, like I said, this is completely unexpected, but completely welcome. Because once in a while on the show in the past, sometimes Mark, especially when Zav was hosting, sometimes we would just end up discussing philosophy, or just end up discussing sort of the way we live our lives, sometimes as brought on by a film or by a moment or by a notion of a film, a notion that a certain filmmaker has laid out in a film or a body of work, and looking at it, how that applies to our lives, or how that's looked at through art and the humanities as a whole, either as a means of this is part of the human condition and it's not going anywhere, and you can either choose to just be like, well, that's just the way life is, or ignore it or be in denial of it, or you can choose to live your life differently. And and I think that one thing that that I think is important is knowing you brought up self-actualization. And I think that really is as important, because you can't control anything. You can't really control anyone or anything. You can kind of control yourself to some degree. You can kind of control your actions to some degree. But it's that idea of, and people when they hear the word surrender, or when they hear the word like relieve, It's sort of like, well, that means like you're giving up, or you're not fighting, or you're not in charge, or you're not winning the battle of your life. And I was just thinking about this today as I was driving, and I'm like, no, I think that it isn't about giving up. It's not about that. I think metaphysics are oftentimes misunderstood as being it's only this way, and to outsiders it's not. It's about duality. It's both. It's just finding that middle ground and not having to explain it to anyone and not even needing to explain it, but living it. And control, I think, is linked in with terror, because it's that illusion of control, the illusion of certain agreements between people, the illusion of certain preconceived notions of, the non-symbiotic, non-master-master intimate relationships, and giving into these made-up movies in our head, or these made-up stories, and playing them over and over on a loop, especially loops that aren't even real. And like you brought up workplace, I think that is so central, because I think a lot of people, and I say a lot of people because I've talked to a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. I've talked to, and both my parents are psychotherapists, and both of them have a lengthy, long history in spirituality and metaphysics and personal growth, but also in, just psychological growth in terms of from a more academic and emotional point of view, of like the more traditional method of sitting down and talking to someone or a couple, and that it's oftentimes the made-up story in someone's head about what someone else or what a group of other people are saying or thinking about you, that you're like, you don't really have any reason or absolute proof that that's what it is, but you sort of link, like a detective, you link one thing to another, and before you know it, this like idea of like being victimized or of being like mistreated. And sometimes it's true that there is a certain, like, this exertion of control, and you brought up middle management. Absolutely. And I think that can create this paranoia among your peers, like not even from your managers, but this idea of persecution, and it can just run rampant. And, and so, this is just super cool stuff you're bringing up, because it's stifling. When I've asked people from all sorts of areas of the workplace, and when I get to know people a little bit more, whether it's even just acquaintances, one of the things I always like to ask them is, like, what are you kind of afraid of? And at first it kind of puts them off, but after a while, I joke around about it, and I'm like, eventually I kind of disarm them with, well, here's what I'm afraid of, and I just say it real straightforward. And one thing I consistently hear is this idea of like losing control, or of not being in charge, and of like the idea that people are just saying these horrible things about them, or thinking these horrible things about them.
Yeah, no, you brought up several very interesting points. One premise in the book is that, as you said, control is really largely an illusion. Now, having said that, I wouldn't say that you have to live your life hiding in a mouse hole. I think you should live your life to the fullest and try to self-actualize, but at the same time, understand that a lot of things are going to happen in our lives. Some things you have time to prepare for, maybe. Many things you don't. And you kind of deal with it as it goes, and just kind of... But it's not always easy to do, and it's like, I've got... My mother is 90 years young, and she still tells me, take things one day at a time, and I always have to remember to try not to get ahead of myself on things. The point about these micromanagers at work, I sort of use the example of, in the chapter on work, of an administrator who has a tendency to micromanage his employees. Now, I used the example of a school administrator, And but oftentimes these micromanaging supervisors, managers, administrators, they're micromanaging people in an attempt to compensate for the fact that they don't know how to administrate or manage or supervise. And I feel like, at least in my opinion, if you're a good manager, supervisor, or administrator, you should be able to recognize the people who know what they're doing, who are doing a good job and working hard, and you let them do their thing. The people who are having difficulty or need support and that kind of thing, you offer it as much as you can. You do what you can to support them. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But these micromanagers can just drive all of the good people out of an organization, a business, a school, and just
Kill the spirit and confuse the mind.
yeah.
It leads to no good. And I also want to get us out of the doldrums a little bit, and we are going to be talking film within about, I'd say 2 seconds. Lamont,
Cool.
what have you seen recently?
Interesting. Like you, Mark, I don't watch much television. I don't watch any, so really, I
Oh,
really
it's a free country. Do what you
try-
want. Don't
try
let
to-
me control you.
But no, I'm always watching film, and recently I just pulled out some oldies that were recorded off of TCM, like the Maltese Falcon.
Houston's version, correct?
Yes,
41?
yes,
That's
and-
John Huston's directorial debut. And I just want to say this. I did read the novel by Dashiell Hammett, and yeah, it's very, essentially verbatim from novel to screen. And for a directorial debut, it's really a stunning entry point for John Huston, just to create such an atmospheric work of iconoclastic noir right off the bat, because noir essentially, in a reductive sense, starts with the Maltese Falcon in the early 40s. That idea of it takes place in San Francisco. That's one of the key noir cities, along with Los Angeles and New York. So it's just kind of this real seminal idea of noir. But please, Lamont, fill us in.
Yeah, no, it's I've maybe seen bits and pieces of it here and there, and the thing about some of these old detective films like that, they can get rather complicated. So you really got to kind of pay attention to what's going on and follow the dialogue. And sometimes I need 2 or 3 views just to maybe keep catching things that I didn't catch before that. Another one I've caught was To Have and Have Not, which was another Bochardt.
One of the best films ever made, absolutely.
Yeah, I believe it was Lauren Bacall's first film ever. She was a model in New York, and then got cast for the film, and apparently she was really terrified during the filming of being on camera and that kind of stuff. But I've been switching between these oldies and actually pulling out some old James Bond films lately.
I do want to say this. When you talk about complexities within the noir idea, I think that's epitomized in 74's Chinatown. That is the one that actually almost demands repeated viewings to a reasonable degree, because of the complexities of the circumstances within the narrative. Why are they here? Why are they there? What does this mean? What are the glasses? Fresh water, salt water, this, that, the other thing. And fortunately, I had a acquaintance pick me up a Chinatown off the streets in Brooklyn. They sell them 145 pages. I think I read it in 2 nights or so, and it is really a great script. It is, it's Robert Towne. And yes, Chinatown, that would kind of like be the template for complexity within noir. To Have and Have Not, is that from a novel by Hemingway? Is that
actually,
Barely.
yes, it is. You're
Okay,
right.
there you
Very good.
Yep, but barely. The product that you see on the screen is made by Howard Hawks in 1944. Is such a thin reproduction of the book itself that Hemingway actually demanded his name be, but to no success and to no avail. wanted his name taken off of that film because there was so little in common between the film and between what he felt was the ethos of his book, what was really the deeper meaning. And really, the thing that makes a great Howard Hawks film a great Howard Hawks film is the small complexities that seem to be just part of the framework of the studio system of making mainstream films. Little gestures of acting, little touches, little graces of camera work, just little motifs, and just a really straightforward, almost utilitarian utilization of all the tools and techniques of the Hollywood Warner Brothers studio system at the time. Editing, cinematography, acting, filmmaking, and just the final product coming together, all the elements being balanced, not one taking precedence over the other, and creating a full picture, a full portrait, utilizing all the means of theater, but allowing the psychology of the frame in filmmaking, and at the time that very boxy 4x3 format, to just allow what is the best angle to shoot this in order to convey the theatricality of the scene, but also make it pleasing on the eye, but not distracting from the story. And he also, Hawks was a master of pacing. He understood to not, I'm trying to not use a very vulgar phrase, to not go too fast, to not. He wanted his films never to build to like a big climax at the end, and he never wanted his films to just sort of drag on after like a really exceptional second act. He always wanted his films to be as entertaining at the beginning as they were at the end, as interesting in all three acts. And he was a really panic-stricken director who would he had anxiety. He was a very strange, very tortured man who had lots of compulsions, lots of personal problems. But at the same time, It's like you watch his films and they're just these like very calm films about very dark and very complex aspects of human nature. And it, oddly enough, control, and sometimes the lack of control, the way that they lose the relationships and the choices between people are a central component of his films. Only Angels Have Wings from 1939, and To Have and Have Not from 44, and of course The Big Sleep from 46. The subtle illusions and relationships and the games that people play with each other. But the key is the illusion, the dream, the fantasy that all of these people have in their mind of who they are themselves and who they are in relation to all the other characters is central, because those illusions are never quite wiped away and discarded. Hawks is always a romantic, but at the same time, there's always the harsh edge of reality that comes in and impedes and changes the course of the film, using that straight edge of character realism development in the middle of his films. So even though his movies are always shot on these, very stodgy, very obvious Hollywood sound stages, there's also this element of psychological depth and realism that I don't know that I've ever seen another filmmaker match in that sort of stagey. There's just a duality to Howard Hawks films that I just love. I could rewatch his movies indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have nothing but respect.
They definitely create an atmosphere where they take you away, and it's like you're going to another place when you're watching them. And as far as the comments on the complexity, which I think are very interesting and very good, I'm also interested in films that are really stories about people. And I know the basics of all screenwriting is that you have a main character or a hero or something that's trying to accomplish something, and there's all these obstacles in the way, and Just when you think they're never going to accomplish them, they finally do. And but for me, a film that wasn't considered terribly dramatic, like American Graffiti, I've often watched and found to be very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great film from
It's a great film.
'73, and I think it was nominated among the nominees for Best Picture for '73. I think '73 is also Scarecrow. If you haven't seen that, with yeah, that would be that's a gem that hasn't been brought up a lot, but that's with it's with Al Pacino, right, Gabe? Scarecrow and Gene Hackman.
Yep, that's a masterful work of art. That's one of the best films I've ever seen. It's one of the films that I would, when people ask me about what are the great films of the American New Wave or what are the great films of the 70s, of course, like Apocalypse Now, Taxi Driver, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, the films of Robert Altman and all these, like these various, Hal Ashby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, this sort of new realism. But when it comes to like the sort of dark, like the approachable darkness, I think that's a film that really, when it comes to the real psychological horrors of the human condition, there are scenes in Scarecrow that are among, and relatably so. That's the key, is that Scarecrow is one of those films that near the end, there's a character that has a nervous breakdown. And it's done in this really eloquent way where it's something that anyone who's ever loved a child or wanted to love a child in any way can completely relate to in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in that specific way. And it's so eloquently and at the same time abstractly allowed to lengthen itself out. It's like you're listening and seeing a piece of discordant harmony get more beautiful and more harrowing and disturbing as the note is held out, almost like a later John Cage piece or something.
Are you telling Lamont he ought to check it out?
I'm telling him that Scarecrow won the Golden Palm at the Cannes Film Festival in 1973 for a reason.
I will check it out.
Yeah, that's an exquisite, very dark film. I would not recommend it for a date night. But as a film that to be watched, I would say by yourself, very contemplatively, and to have a little bit of time to think. It's one of those movies that when it's over, it's like, I'm not going to pop another film in and just watch another movie. It's like the exact opposite of like episodic television. The exact opposite of like a Transformers film. And just the shooting style, the use of lighting in that film, and Hackman's expressions, and the way that his character is so subtly moved by the other main character of that film. That film really, if you had to pick the great Gene Hackman performance, it is not The French Connection, which is a great film, but it is definitely, it's Scarecrow. And if I had to pick my favorite Al Pacino performance besides Panic in Needle Park, it's definitely Scarecrow.
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to make two pronunciation connections. It's can and contemplative.
Thank you. Yeah, con, I get them confused sometimes.
Never again.
Also, I wanted to, I'm glad, Lamar, that you like classic film. Mark and I have sometimes brought up, various films that we would say I would say this is a great model for a screenplay, or that's what I would consider a great screenplay, or a great model for a screenplay. I think maybe my favorite model for a screenplay would be The Maltese Falcon in some ways, in terms of like a thriller or an action film. Goodfellas is also just superb for other reasons. But the mounting tension is something I've always been really interested in. The suspense of mounting tension. John Carpenter's The Thing as a similar thing going on.
Oh yes.
Yeah. What's interesting about Carpenter, I was just thinking about it, is that The Thing obviously is a masterpiece. That Halloween '78 brought in the idea of the the slasher film and actually made it a very economically viable idea in the marketplace. And that trend went on into the mid '80s. In fact, it actually collapsed upon itself with Saturday the 14th, almost a few years afterward, where the idea of the horror film was recognized by itself in parody form. So, LaMont, what I have to ask you too. What are some of your favorite or what screenwriting books do you enjoy?
Well, I just finished Sid Field's Foundations of Screenwriting, and just a great book on how to write screenplays. And I've got four more that I'm trying to start, and I'll be getting into them this summer, because I find the more you read on how. Oh, you'd probably know the author better than I would. One of them, not sure if it's good or bad. How to Write a Screenplay in 21 Days.
Oh, Vicky King.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's the Dramatics of Screenwriting.
Oh yeah, I can't. Are you talking about the? Wait a second. I shouldn't cut you off.
No. That and.
What do you mean the Dramatics of Screenwriting? Or is it a different title?
I don't have the titles fresh in my mind.
Are we talking about the one from about 50 years ago? A very fundamental.
Yeah, who's the author?
I am afraid to try to pronounce his name.
Lagos or something.
Yeah. I do not.
That's considered a very standard and very important text.
It's in the living room. I'm reading it.
Well, it's interesting. I bought the books
I'll ask you how to pronounce that when we get back.
It's interesting. I bought the books for a course. I took an introduction to screenwriting, and but I ended up dropping it because the gentleman that taught the course would not allow any adaptations. And I wanted to adapt my own book, this book Control, to a screenplay, and he just wouldn't accept any adaptations. And he was so rigid with the way he began teaching the course that, he said, I don't want anything on gangsters, or I don't want this and I don't want that. And I thought to myself, where would Francis Ford Coppola be right now? Or Martin Scorsese be if their first professor who taught the introduction to screenwriting say, I don't want anything on gangsters? So anyway, needless to say, I dropped the course, but I still have the books, and I've read the first one, and going to plow through the next. Yeah,
I think that, it's really smart to actually, Linda Sager's Making a Good Script Great is another excellent text on screenwriting. There's many.
Yes,
there's actually many.
Mm-hmm.
There's many, and I think Tom Pankowski, you had tackled one. Is that the one by Tom Schimmels? John Schimmels, yeah. And there's many. And the thing about it is, it's like working out or something like that. Is you just don't do it for one day. You do it on a regular basis. So if you're a screenwriter and you're spending a number of years getting into the groove, you want to saturate your conscious as well as your subconscious with this information and this inspiration. So always hit what your craft is, and keep honing it and honing in on it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an art that is a lot harder to do than most people would think.
People have no idea.
It's almost a form of like, I see it as a form of like minimalist writing, because I know for myself, when I sit down to write a scene, and I know the usually two characters that are going to be in the scene and what the scene is about or what they want to convey, my trick is to put on some soundtrack music from any film you can think of that doesn't have any lyrics, and then you just sort of let go and let the stuff come onto the page. But I find myself writing scenes that are generally too long, and in most cases you've got to do it in 2 or 3 pages, and if you're approaching that second or third page and you already don't know where you're going with this and how you want to end this scene and what you want to convey, you can just get into a lot of trouble. I never realized, 1 page of screenplay is 1 minute on film, and those guidelines of 110 pages to 120, if you can't stay within those, it's going to be very difficult to get an independent producer or agent to even look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what they're looking for, unless you're known or something like that. It's an act of amateurism and it's an act of arrogance to submit a screenplay that is longer than, essentially like 120 pages or roughly around there, because it's immediately saying, "Hey, I'm breaking the rules," or something like that, and you may not be allowed, or they may not be interested in rule breakers at that time. So LaMont hit it right on the nose.
And a fair amount of the time, there's a fair amount of agencies that recognize that right away, that the writer himself, him or herself, may not even recognize that. They're like, okay, looking through the first 5 pages, they skip it. They see, okay, we got 150 pages here. We have someone who's a good writer, and this is, okay, we have some really sparse dialogue, and we have these lengthy okay, and they just skip it. And,
with this,
it's just they just skip it. They don't even bother, even if it has a lot of these check marks on it. If your script is sometimes, in some cases, I've even read even 100, and Mark, thank you, because it just kind of ebbs and flows with trends. It seems and there have been literally statistical trends where they've charted data on what's and they look at it in the past, because there's never like all this statistical data about what's hot right now, but they look at it like what was hot like in this year or what was hot in that year. And this is only according to certain agencies and certain people that were willing to sort of go along with this and that were allowed to chart their data. So that's obviously at best maybe 65 to 70% accurate, but they will show these trends that don't seem to have any sort of logic behind them, besides maybe like trends at the box office, perhaps, or trends in what types of scripts they were selling around that time or representing around that time. And even like scripts above 105, there will be these periods where like anything above 105 wasn't selling, and then there will be periods where anything below a certain number won't sell. So
yeah, I think it's a great point that Field makes in that book is there's no exact formula for what's going to hit and what isn't, because if there was, everyone would be writing it, and things come out that they never expected and they hit. But yeah, he mentions that at least when that book came out, 1 minute of film is like $10,000. Who knows what it is now? But the bottom line is it's a business, and they're there to make money. I just wanted to interject one thing about American Graffiti. When I've watched pretty extensive interviews with George Lucas on, the first draft he was saying was over 300 pages, and he didn't know what to do with it, and he hired a series of screenwriters, and then eventually that couple, I can't recall their name, that he knew. But one of the main criticisms from the studio with the film was that it wasn't dramatic enough, and the studio wanted one of the 4 characters or one of the kids to die, and Lucas argued against that and stuck with it. And I have a deep respect for movies like that can tell a story, but it's not necessarily always this huge dramatic thing that somebody's trying to accomplish or do. And I think if you can write and keep it interesting, that's really the hard part.
Well, I think that there were a fair amount of films, even even more mainstream films, we're starting, as the French New Wave had sort of taken influx, and that was a huge revolution in world filmmaking. Japanese avant-garde filmmakers that were making still films that on paper you would be like, okay, this is an avant-garde premise. We're going to shoot in this really artistically obtuse way, but essentially it's still love story of man versus nature, man versus self. Man has existential crisis. Man has to, in a more Japanese way. But then you have these world cinemas that come into fold. The American studio system almost collapses on itself. A new breed of filmmakers come in, and you have these new types of films. Even like when I asked my mom, like, what were some of her favorite films from around that period, even a movie like Summer of 42 doesn't really have this big studio objective behind it. It's really even though it's a mainstream film, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just sort of a film that almost has this Romare-like quality of it's just a portrait of a time and a place.
Yeah, great film. I feel, and the story that it tells, and about growing up, and the loss of innocence, and sometimes stories like that can be, for me anyway, just as powerful as anything. Where somebody's trying to climb Mount Everest, and there's avalanches coming at them every 2 seconds.
Yeah, amen. And I just want to add too that I was reading Stephen A. Walt's book on the making of Duel, because it's obviously it's the burgeoning of spring leads to the blossoming of summer, et cetera, and you've got all these road films. So I was getting into the cycle of spring reading and so forth. So I picked up back into the making of Duel. And one of the interesting things about that is you've seen that, right, Lamont? And you've
no, I haven't.
Oh my man. Okay, hold on a second.
Oh man.
Yeah, so you're in for a treat. Yeah, thank you. And Tom confidently chimes in, thumbs up, saying great films. Thank you, great film. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, Duel. One of Steven Spielberg's first films, made for television, November '71. It came out. Anyway, you're gonna love it. Starring Dennis
It's
Weaver.
one of the most
well-edited. Okay, now I recall it because...
But you haven't seen it.
Yep. No, didn't they take the sound of the crash
dinosaur,
of the truck at the end, and they actually used that in Jaws?
They faded. There's something, you may exactly
at the very end, after the shark's blown up?
Yes, yes,
and
actually...
Yep.
And I do what... So what happened was... Arch Obler, who did the Lights Out radio drama series, he actually went after the makers of Duel because he said that it copied his radio drama, What the Devil, and also there can be found a very distinct similarity in an episode of Suspense, Snow on 66. I think about this redneck pickup driver haunting this couple around town in his pickup. So if you've seen Duel, you can check out Arch Obler's Lights Out episode of What the Devil and Suspense's Snow on 66. And I've yet to do that, and I very much look forward to doing that. So, Lamont, on your list, Duel.
Duel and Scarecrow.
Duel. You must. Duel... That 71, that tight editing, that great look and that feel of that shot on film immediacy, the fervor of this new filmmaking. This and Spielberg was just making a movie for TV, but man, did he knock it out of the park! I will say this about Spielberg: as much as I love Steven Spielberg, but some of the best motifs and the best iconic moments of some of his films. That the other technicians, like the cinematographers, the special effects workers, or other people that work on his films, these are motifs that are, like all great art, are in some cases overtly stolen and taken. No, stolen's the wrong word, but inspired and borrowed from the things that inspired or that captivated these artists as children, and in many cases specifically Steven Spielberg. If you look at the cinematography. In the first 25 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, and you're like, how people were like, oh man, the handheld and and the use of special effects and the grit and the realism. Go back and watch some episodes of Combat from the 1950s. You know, one of the most straightforward, just based American flag-waving American TV shows that's ever aired. And all of that cinematography, all of that so-called innovation is right there. And especially in the episodes that Vic Morrow himself directed, because Vic Morrow did the show for 5, 6, 7 years.
Oh yeah.
And there came a point where Vic Morrow had studied director after director after director that had come in and that had given him different types of acting. You know, some of these theater actors that were using more improvisational style of dramatic or psychological forms of theater acting, and then other directors that would come in that were just real economical, 1 or 2 takes, like doing the Clint Eastwood method, like, let's just get it done, let's do it, it's primal, get it, let's move on. And other directors that were more into the larger scope of what we can achieve using camera work. And Vic Morrow took notes mentally and thought, well, that works for that scene, and that's the kind of filmmaking that works best for this. So he was looking at the finished product of what works best in the show at the end. Did that method actually work? Well, it sounded really good. It made him sound he sounded smart in person, but in the end, this is a TV show about guys with machine guns in World War II. What actually works? And the episodes that Vic Morrow directed are just stunning. And a lot of that innovation that you see in Saving Private Ryan comes right from those shows. And there's just a number of other motifs that you'll notice in Spielberg that are borrowed, inspired. Lucas, too. They call themselves the children of television because both of them were very lonely, sort of very shuffled around children, that their best friend was TV. In fact, in many ways, they talk about their only friend being television. And that and you see that in Lucas, you see that in Spielberg, that the toys, the idea of this sort of campy postmodernism, the idea of like ideas and dreams and the childlike perspective. But anyway,
yeah. No, I think Tarantino probably had a very similar experience growing up as well. We mentioned American Graffiti, and for me, it's films about relationships and how people interact or react and things like that. What did you think of American Beauty?
Well, that's a film
Sam
that
Mendes.
I think. Well, I think it's a masterful screenplay, but I think the finished film is very pretentious and cynical. But I think it's a masterful film, and I think at the time when it came out in 1999, the way that movie affected young people and affected people that had, I saw an equal effect in teenagers and in people over the age of 40. Because it said something in a very honest, very harrowing way that I saw that movie in the theater with my divorced parents, who had just started to become friends again after they had a long, nasty divorce 10 years prior.
Wow.
And, they started to just be friends. And the first movie that we saw as a family again, like as a son and a mom and a dad, was American Beauty. And we just walked out of the theater silent and stunned. We were just stunned. And my dad said, I haven't seen a movie that has affected me in a realistic way like that in probably 20 years.
Wow.
And, my mom was sobbing at the end because, it's a film about a fractured, broken marriage and about the, these illusions of suburbia, of the idea of the American dream and all these agreements, agreements that people make with themselves and each other, themselves and each other. And she walked out and she just was like, I just wish it wasn't so angry, but I really admire the filmmaking and I admire all the acting.
Yeah,
and
I think that the honesty of the script was very powerful. And when when it opens up and Lester says, I'm already dead. You don't know this, but I wasn't always this way. I sort of lost something along the way, and he attempts to find it.
Excellent. A stunning gap of silence, which I have rarely ever heard on this show. But are you guys there? Hello?
Hello, yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
excellent.
here. I'm here.
So,
Just
yeah,
those
so,
words are resonant. The narration in that film. I know we got to go soon, Mark. It is truly the narration and those wide, helicopter shots that really are the thing I remember most about that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, American Beauty is a film I don't personally like. I've revisited it a few times, and I think that it's both a complete success, and in some ways it's kind of aged a little hard on itself. But I think it's the screenplay underneath the film that hasn't aged.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the storytelling that really is this poignant, powerful, immense thing that cannot be denied or ignored.
LaMont, what do you look forward to seeing next? And I think as Gabe pointed out, we're in the waning minutes now.
I just picked up a film on Blu-ray that I haven't had a chance to open yet, but I've heard interesting things about. I think it's directed. It's called Baby Driver, and it's directed by the gentleman.
Edgar Wright.
Yeah, Edgar Wright, and I don't know. It seems to be. It seems
the cinematography is going to blow you away. I personally couldn't stand the film, but as a work of visual filmmaking, it's almost unparalleled by anything in years.
No kidding.
Well, that's exciting news because I was aware of it, but the way you contextualize it at this point, it may be now elevated to something quote unquote of interest.
On a visual level, it's almost unparalleled by anything in a mainstream film. Using the Hollywood filmmaking methods, it's actually interesting. I mean, I remember walking out of it. I just can't stand cuteness, and the film is just layered upon layered upon layered with this sort of postmodern cuteness and sweetness and irony and this sort of youthful vigor just for the sake of youthful vigor. And I just was annoyed beyond annoyed by the time I was done with it, but that's not a criticism that I would say is universal. That's just my own taste. That was something that was very personal and has a lot to do with people that I've worked with in my life. So I'll admit it, it's more of a criticism of myself than anything.
Well, you're working with us now, Gabe, and it is the time that we have to say goodbye to you. And
Mark,
I
as
just wanted
always,
to say thanks so much, my man.
As always,
Gabe,
a pleasure.
Gabe, it was a pleasure meeting you and sharing this time. So thank you so much. And
thank you, Gabe. And that was Gabe Van Handel. LaMont and I have 60 seconds of extended conversation to indulge. Okay. LaMont, I like the shirt you're wearing. He's wearing a nice, pleasing blue T-shirt, a red control hat. He's a man on the scene, and it was really, really neat of you to stop by, LaMont.
Thank you so much for having me. Can I just quickly mention the prologue from the book is a little story about a child trying to build a dam, and it's you can YouTube it, LaMont Prospect Control, or the prologue Medium Mix 2. It's about 6.5 minutes.
Excellent. And LaMont, I do appreciate you getting that in there, so people can become acquainted with your work. Thank you very much, LaMont Prospect.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you, listeners, of course, for listening in. I would live strongly and in the present. That's something for sure to consider. We will be on at the same time next week on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.